Hello friends, I'm Joseph Barat Cornell, and I'm the founder and president of Sharing Nature Worldwide and author of the Sharing Nature book series. I'd like to share with you today a revolutionary learning system or process. It's called flow learning. And when I was a young educator back in the late 70s and actually early 70s, I was wanting people to be really engaged, and I would lead my outdoor field trips. And back then it was a time where people were very passive and they would just listen. It was more fact-oriented. And I wanted people to become alive, and I wanted the experience to mean something for them. And I wanted people to be at their best. But I didn't want to lecture to them. I wanted them, through their own experience, be able to understand on an intuitive level. And so I started creating Sharing Nature games and activities that taught concepts, but also attitudes, and just helped them to just feel that they were a part of nature and the greater environment. And then I found that there was a sequence that you can use these activities so that you can build a sense of momentum and also depth. And so these activities were put into 4 different stages. And these stages really reflect a sense of growing awareness and understanding, and also how we mature as a human being. The first stage is Awaken enthusiasm. This is to help people to have a lively interest and engagement. And when people are in play, for example, the students are 100% committed to their play, the focus of their play, and their whole being is behind it. And so when you start a flow learning experience with playful activities, you get all the children saying, "Yes, I like this. This is great." It's like a car. You know, if you had a stationary car and you wanted to turn the car, but it was not moving, it'd be very hard to twist the tires, wouldn't it, through the steering wheel. But if you got that car going to 2, 3, maybe 4 miles per hour or kilometers, then you could actually, with one finger on the steering wheel, you could guide that car and turn it. And so when the students, we know as educators that when the students are enthusiastic and they're having fun, it means something to them, that they're very willing, and you can guide that willingness. And so the flow learning offers activities and experiences that the children, the students, they really find very rewarding and exciting, and then it goes to more refined activities. The second stage of flow learning is called focus attention, and here we're trying to help students become more receptive, more observant, attentive. This whole development of flow learning came out of my experience with outdoor education, but now so I'll be using a lot of natural images, but this flow learning can be used to teach any subject, and we'll talk more about that. These activities challenge the students to use one of their physical senses, and because the challenge is fun, they put their whole energy behind it, and they become very, very observant and attentive. And then the third stage is called offer direct experience. And this is where you try to have people to have an absorbing experience in nature, so that they really feel a part of nature, and they sort of lose themselves really in the nature experience. You know, the study of the right side of the brain, we know that's the more intuitive side, and the left side of the brain is more the rational side. It's not, there's a flow back and forth between the two sides, but to simply explain it that way you can. But recent brain science has discovered that all new learning takes place in the right side of the brain. It's processed there. It's the brain that doesn't produce it, but the brain actually is a physical processor. And so if we want students to be able to learn new things, to develop new behaviors, and have greater insights and a holistic sense of the subject, and not superficial knowing just some of the details or facts about a subject, we want to start with the right side of the brain and a more intuitive side. And so the model is that you develop more from the intuition, that side, then you go to the left side and you clarify, you manipulate the information, and you by defining things, categorizing things, get a real sense so that you can communicate it and becomes clear. But then you give it back to the right side of the brain, so it always stays in a sense of wholeness. It's like a piece of music. You can hear beautiful music and are really inspired by it. But if you wanted to play that music, you have to take parts of it and master those different parts, and that's the left side. But then you have to put all those pieces together to have the full, beautiful piece of music, and that would be giving it back to the right side. Well, the fourth stage of flow learning is called share inspiration. And this gives students a chance to have a sense of completion, to have more clarity. Research has shown it's not enough to have inspiration, but on reflecting on that inspiration and trying to express it artistically, whether through a poem or storytelling, a drawing, or some sharing activity among other students in small groups. It really helps to have that sense of completion. Also, it creates an inspirational atmosphere for the students to embrace new ideas and also to celebrate the subject, if it's nature, for example. Now, just to make it a little bit more concrete for you, there are activities that fit with each of these four stages. And they're specially designed activities that teach different aspects of nature, and also how they're categorized by their energy level, and on what level of flow learning stage we're talking about. And the four activities I'd like to share that will make it a little bit more clear for you. Awaken enthusiasm activity could be the build a tree game, where you make a tree with all the students being different parts of the tree and playing each role that part has. And people have a great time. It's really fun. They're making the movements of a tree, and they learn so much because they're moving their bodies and having fun. They pay more attention. I found that I can teach a lot more about tree biology through that activity than I can if I was just talking to the students. And then another example would be for focus attention, and this is making a sound map, where you have a piece of paper and an X, and this is where you are on the map. And then you close your eyes, cup your hands behind your ears, and you listen for each sound in the forest, let's say, if you're in the forest. And then when you hear a sound, then you make a mark that represents that sound on your map. And so the students, they might be listening for 5-10 minutes doing this activity, just really absorbed with where they are, and they just have a growing awareness of nature through this activity. And then offer direct experience stage, these activities have more of a way of absorbing the student in the subject. And this would be meet a tree, where you blindfold a person, take them out to a tree. They feel what's unique about that tree, and you may guide their hands to different places, and then you take them back. You take off the blindfold, and they look for their tree. And we found that children, because they have such a strong experience with their tree, they're able to find their tree in the forest, and they remember it. So the fourth stage activity, example of one, would be writing a vertical poem, where you look at something in nature, you write down the word, and then you use the letters for each word to express, be the first word for that sentence, for that line, and then you go to the next letter and write your next line. And it just gets people just stopping and feeling, well, what is it that I'm feeling? And it just lifts their feeling too at the same time. So these, so flow learning has very good activities that fit at each of the stages, and that's what helps the stage really come alive, is the power of the student's experience through the different activities. Now, why do we use play so much in the flow learning process? Well, play, people are at their best when they play, physically and mentally, because they're totally committed to their play. And everything else is set aside. You know, maybe little squabbles and, you know, just whatever. A student could be having a bad day or whatever, but through the joy of play, everybody just normally just drops all that by the wayside. And I found that the flow learning and these playful activities really take care of a lot of the discipline problems, because it's really creating that sense of engagement. And play, it helps you to really be absorbed in the focus of your play. And this is when you start to really understand the nuances of it, because you're totally in the experience, and you're not separate from the experience. You're not passive in regard to the experience. And in that total dedication to the experience, that's when we really open up and are able to learn more and more and more. Other attributes of play are a diminished sense of self, being in the present moment, and just really bonding with others. They said in play that even like animals, they don't have any sense of social structure. Like wolves or coyotes, they have a sense of structure in their societies, but when they play, everybody's equal, because there's the joy of playing, so people just want to play. And there's stories of wolves, a wild wolf playing with little dogs in Juneau in Alaska, and he could have just snapped those dogs up right away, but he wanted to play because he just felt the joy of play, and so he played with these tiny little dogs, and he was probably about 15 times as big, and jaws probably 20 times as strong. And so with play, there are different levels of play. There's active games, physically active, but also there's games that are very calm and reflective, and you create a momentum where the first two stages of flow learning, and get everybody on the same page, and where they create a fond experience, association with the subject. And then as they become calm, they start, their feeling is more refined, and they're more on a wavelength where they can appreciate more inspirational ideas and experiences. And so what flow learning does is it helps you to meet the students where they are, and they go step by step, gently, to a more profound experience of the subject. And so it's working from the inside with the students, not from the outside, through their own experiences. And again, you can teach concepts very powerfully when it's associated with that activity, because it really brings it out and highlights it. And the children aren't resisting, but they're just embracing the whole experience. A lot of they did a study of people who are creative and have really contributed to their fields, inventors, people that were Nobel-winning scientists, artists, and they found that a lot of them, and a quite a surprising number of them, they use different methods to get to transport themselves into the center or inside their subject. So they weren't studying it from the outside, but they were almost like in it and then looking out. so that they really were their subject. And that really helped them to see what they were studying and looking at in a way that was so totally different than the typical scientist who's working more with facts and information. But these discoveries that people were making were very, very thrilling. You know, Albert Einstein, he in 1905, he wrote 5 revolutionary papers, and that just transformed the way that we see the world since from the beginning, and is continuing to shape our way of life and our understanding of life. And a physicist said today that if Einstein had written his papers today, they'd be thrown in the trash bin because there are no citations or references to his work. And that's a pretty shocking statement. But academia is so oriented around old knowledge, past knowledge, but Einstein really felt a sense of rightness in what he was learning, and it was just thrilling. And it's been thrilling to the other scientists. So he made a really strong contribution, and we can really help our students too when we help them to have an experience where they're really totally with the subject that they're learning. So they aren't learning on the periphery of it, but they really sense what the animal, maybe if it's music or whatever subject you're teaching, where they really have an inner sense of it. And that's what flow learning helps to do with these activities. Now, there's a thing called phase change in matter. A substance will go from solid to liquid to gas as the temperature increases. And at each stage, that substance in its solid state will have different qualities than in its liquid state, and then also its gaseous state. And in its solid state, it's fixed and rigid, and the molecules are just tightly arrayed to each other, and they're just moving just a tiny little bit, the atoms and electrons. And then liquid phase, there is more movement, so the water will flow, but it doesn't rise, and but it fills the shape of any container it's in. And then the gas stage is there's a lot of energy, and it's all these molecules and have broken apart, and they're just shooting every which way, and they're not ruled by gravity, and it fills up the container all the way to the top, and so we see with people that somebody who's fixed and rigid doesn't want to change. Like you probably have met people like that, and then when you add more energy with flow learning, it's a technique of energy and also of raising consciousness in the participants. Then people will go through a phase from more maybe fixed, solid, if that's where they are, and become more liquid and more fluid and more adaptable, wanting to do new things, try new things, and not just stay with the old ways. And then the gaseous stage, where people really go into the heart of something, and there's no restraints on gases, and they mix freely with each other and with other gases. And there's such a commonality and a sense of kinship among the gases, where their properties are more similar than they are their uniqueness. And we start to feel the sense of closeness with nature, with other people. Yogis, the air center is in the heart, the center of love, where we express love and feel love deeply. And the quality, there's the elements of earth, water, fire, air, and then ether. Well, with the air, that's the quality is of kinship, because you really feel your sense of belonging, and you feel your sense of sameness in a profound way with all the rest of life, or different aspects of your subject if you're teaching something in particular. And so it's a way of, a student could be like a physical substance. You have the same substance, but that substance changes its properties by what each phase that it's in, if it's solid, liquid, or gas. And so when we have a heavy, solid consciousness that's inert, it's hard to change. And then if someone is more fluid, they're willing to try more things, they're adaptable, and they sort of blend with things. And then the last stage, where or the air element, people have a profound sense of kinship with other things. And this really helps people to feel their sense of deep relationship with that which you're studying. There was a study on flow learning recently that in 2020, and in Taiwan, and they had 112 participants in the study, and they measured people's brain waves, their heart rate, and some other medical things, and they gave them questionnaires, and they found that 100% of the participants enjoyed the content of the sessions, and I think it was 98% really helped. It really helped them to feel a sense of a oneness with nature, and it felt like they were approaching nature with a sense of innocence. And I think it was 98% felt a real affinity with the teacher. That's what's exciting about flow learning, is that you can really meet your highest goals as an educator. I always wanted to have really profound learning experiences out in nature with the participants, and I found that by play I could bring people along gently, where they would have an experience that would lead to the next experience, and it took care of a lot of the discipline problems, as I mentioned. Also, there was a sense of total participation, but also that people were going farther than they ordinarily would through the activities and through the magnetism of the group being really focused. And it just sort of carried all of us. And so flow learning really offers an opportunity, I feel, for teachers, because it will make teaching a joy for you and also your students. And also you'll feel a sense of great purpose, because you are communicating things that are quite profound and meaningful to your students. And you can really start to see their lives really change. I'm sure that you're doing that. Of course you're doing this already in so many different ways. Flow learning just has a simple format of the 4 stages and accompanying activities, and then you can just add your own. You have a real sense of, because you're working with the energy level with your students. So often, educators will think just of the information they need to communicate, but they have no sense of the students' receptivity, their own interests, and their own willingness to embrace that information. And so that's the second part of the equation, is getting the students totally on board with the learning experience. And so flow learning in real easy ways can really help to resolve that and to really bring that out as a real strength, is the students' participation. And so, like I've said, I've been able to just really accomplish my goals, which were quite high as an educator, and it's made teaching just so much more enjoyable because I feel I'm not imposing things on children, but I'm bringing them out, and that's what education means in Greek, is to bring out, and so this is what we're all trying to do, is to bring out the best and the creativity in students so that they have a real larger sense of their relationship with all of life.